In the forgotten corners of Blackthorn Village, where shadows lingered longer and smiles grew scarce, lived a girl named Maya. The villagers saw only what they wanted to see. A thin, silent orphan with empty pockets and downcast eyes. They never noticed how she shared crumbs with birds when her own stomach growled with hunger, or how her hands, cracked from endless labor, still moved with gentle grace when tending wildflowers no one else bothered to admire. Poverty had taught Maya to expect little and hope for even less. Each morning she woke in the same silent cottage where her parents' voices no longer echoed, where their absence left a hole in her heart that years couldn't fill. But beneath her worn shawl beat a heart that refused to harden despite the world's cruelty. A dangerous kind of compassion in a place where kindness was often mistaken for weakness. She never imagined that feeding an injured wolf pup her last piece of bread would tear the veil between two worlds. That one simple act of mercy would summon golden eyes from the darkness. Eyes that saw not what she lacked, but what burned within her, wild and unbroken. She couldn't know that the forest shadows spreading toward her humble door would bring an ancient, untamed force. A king who commanded beasts with a single thought, yet found himself powerless before her quiet courage. For some debts can only be paid in blood and belonging, and some hungers run deeper than those sated by mere bread. Before we begin, remember to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Every day brings a new story. Now let's begin. The winter wind whistled through the cracks of Maya's tiny hut, bringing the promise of another bitter night. She pulled her worn shawl tighter around her shoulders, watching her breath form small clouds in the icy air. In the fireplace, only the last coals glowed, barely providing enough warmth to keep her fingers from freezing. Maya's stomach growled in protest as she reached for the small cloth bundle on her rickety table. Carefully, she unwrapped it, revealing half a loaf of stale bread, payment for 12 hours of washing clothes for the innkeeper's wife. This had to last 2 days, maybe 3 if she was careful. Better than nothing, she whispered to herself, breaking off a small piece. At 20 years old, Maya had grown accustomed to Blackthorn's harsh realities. Orphaned at 12 when her parents fell to illness within weeks of each other, she'd spent her youth fighting to survive. The villagers tolerated her presence, but showed no kindness to the girl living alone at the forest's edge. Some whispered that misfortune followed her like a shadow. Others simply looked away when she passed, as if poverty were contagious. A sudden gust rattled the shutters. Maya sighed, knowing she'd need to gather more firewood before darkness fell. She wrapped the remaining bread carefully and tucked it in her pocket. With a resigned sigh, she grabbed her threadbare cloak and pushed open the door. The forest loomed before her, a dark wall of ancient trees standing like sentries against the gray winter sky. Despite the villagers' fear of the woods, yes, especially at dusk, Maya had never felt threatened by the forest shadows. If anything, the trees offered more comfort than the judging stares of Blackthorn's residents. Just quick gathering, she promised herself, entering the narrow path winding between the first row of trees. The forest floor was covered with a thin layer of frost that crunched beneath her boots as she collected fallen branches. The cold air stung her lungs, but the solitude and gentle sounds of nature preparing for night radiated peace. She'd nearly filled her arms with wood when a soft whimper reached her ears. Maya paused, tilting her head to listen. The sound came again, a pitiful, pained whine from a thicket of brambles to her right. Curiosity overcame caution as she set down her bundle of branches and approached the source. Kneeling beside the thorn bush, she carefully pushed aside the prickly vines. "Oh," she gasped before she could stop herself. In the dead leaves lay a wolf pup, no more than a few months old. His silver-gray fur was crusted with blood, and a primitive metal trap had bitten into his hind legs' tender flesh. The pup's amber eyes, wide with fear and pain, fixed on Maya's face. In Blackthorn, wolves were feared and hunted. "The forest belongs to them," villagers said, and anyone who ventured too deep rarely returned. Yet the creature before her bore no resemblance to the monsters of village legends. It was small, vulnerable, suffering. "Poor thing," Maya whispered, slowly extending her hand. The pup growled weakly, baring tiny teeth in a futile gesture of defiance. "I won't hurt you. I promise." With careful movements, such she examined the trap, a simple hunter's snare, probably meant for rabbits rather than wolves. The metal teeth hadn't severed the leg completely, but the wound was deep and inflamed. "This might hurt," she warned, as if the animal could understand. "But I have to get this off you!" Maya found a sturdy stick nearby, wedged it between the trap's jaws, and pressed down with all her strength. The mechanism resisted at first, then released with a metallic snap. The pup yelped in pain but didn't try to bite. As Maya carefully freed his injured leg, more blood began flowing from the wound. Without hesitation, she tore a strip of fabric from the hem of her already tattered dress and wrapped it around the pup's leg to stop the bleeding. "There," she said softly. "That should help for now." The pup's eyes remained fixed on her, no longer filled with fear, but with something resembling weary assessment. Maya had never been this close to a wolf, not even a young one. In his gaze lay an intelligence that unsettled her, a depth that seemed almost human. Darkness was falling quickly, and with it the temperature plummeted. Maya knew she couldn't leave the injured animal alone in the night. Predators would be drawn by the smell of blood, and in his weakened state, the pup wouldn't survive. "I think you'll have to come with me," she decided, carefully lifting him into her arms. He was surprisingly heavy, strong muscles hidden beneath soft fur. The pup tensed but didn't resist as she pressed him against her chest. It was awkward gathering the firewood with one arm. But Maya managed to balance her double burden on the short walk back to her hut. By the time she pushed open the door, it had grown completely dark, and the temperature had dropped further. Inside, she quickly revived the fire, adding several fresh branches. As the small room slowly filled with warmth, Maya laid the pup on a clean cloth near the hearth. In the firelight, she could see the full extent of his injury. The wound was deep but clean. The trap had cut through flesh, but miraculously spared the major tendons. "You need food to heal," she murmured, reaching for the bread in her pocket. She broke off half her meager supply and offered it to the pup. The young wolf sniffed cautiously before accepting, devouring the stale bread with a desperate hunger that mirrored Maya's own constant ache. "That's all I have," she said apologetically. "But tomorrow I'll try to find something better for you." As if understanding her words, the pup licked her fingers, his rough tongue surprisingly gentle on her skin. Maya smiled, a rare expression on her usually serious face. "You need a name," she said, stroking his silver fur. "Though I suspect you already have one, don't you? Your mother must be terribly worried." At the mention of his mother, the pup's ears perked up. For a moment, Maya thought she saw something flash in those amber eyes. Perhaps a spark of understanding, or shared grief. After all, she knew what it was like to be lost and alone. "Rest now," she whispered, arranging more rags around the pup to create a makeshift bed. "Your leg needs time to heal." As night deepened, Maya leaned against the wall beside the fire, watching the pup's chest rise and fall in sleep. Outside, wind howled through the trees, carrying the distant sound of wolves calling to each other. The pup's ears twitched at every howl, but he remained curled beside Maya, seemingly content in the warmth of her modest home. She couldn't explain the connection she felt to this wild creature, this child of the forest who should be her enemy according to village wisdom. Perhaps it was simply recognizing a fellow outcast, or perhaps it was nothing more than basic compassion. The desire to ease suffering wherever she found it. Whatever the reason, as Maya drifted into exhausted sleep, her hand resting lightly on the pup's silver fur, she couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had changed. Something in the delicate balance between village and forest, between her lonely existence and the secrets lurking beyond the tree line. What she didn't know, couldn't know, was that deep in the forest, powerful eyes had witnessed her act of mercy, and by morning word would spread like wildfire through the pack. A human girl had saved a wolf's life, not just any wolf, but the youngest son of the Alpha King himself, and debts in the world of wolves were always repaid. Chapter 2. The Alpha King's Arrival. The next day passed for Maya like a blur, though her heart felt lighter than it had in years. The pup had recovered remarkably overnight. His wound showed signs of healing at a speed that seemed almost unnatural. By midday he was limping around her hut, and his amber eyes following her every movement with that same unsettling intelligence. "You're healing well," Maya noted, returning from the village well with a bucket balanced on her hip. Perhaps too well. The pup tilted his head, ears alert. "I've never seen an animal recover so quickly," she continued, setting the water bucket down. "What are you, little one?" As if answering, the pup approached and pressed his nose against her hand. The gesture so deliberate and gentle that a shiver ran down Maya's spine. This was no ordinary wolf. All day she talked to him as if he were human, telling stories of her parents, of happier times before illness took them. The pup listened, sometimes whining softly when her voice caught on painful memories, sometimes wagging his tail when she spoke of rare, happy recollections. "I suppose I should let you go soon," Maya said as evening approached, the realization filling her with unexpected sadness. "Your family must be searching for you." The pup's ears flattened, and he made a soft whimper that sounded almost like protest. "Don't worry," she soothed, scratching behind his ears. "I'll make sure you're strong enough first." As darkness fell, Maya shared her last bread with the pup, then settled by candlelight to mend a torn shirt, a luxury she rarely indulged in, saved for the coldest nights when fire alone couldn't keep darkness at bay. She was so absorbed in her work that she almost missed it. The subtle change in the night's rhythm, the sudden absence of familiar sounds. The crickets had fallen silent. The night birds no longer sang. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Then came a howl, a deep, resonant sound that seemed to shake the very foundations of her hut. It was completely different from the distant howling she occasionally heard from the forest. This was closer, more powerful, somehow commanding. The pup jumped up, ears pricked, body trembling with excitement rather than fear. "What is that?" Maya whispered, instinctively moving to the small window beside her door. What she saw froze the blood in her veins. Wolves, dozens of them, perhaps more, emerged from the forest edge like living shadows. Their eyes reflected moonlight in eerie golden and silver points of light. They moved with purpose and coordination, suggesting something that went beyond animal instinct. In their midst ran the largest wolf Maya had ever seen. A massive beast with pitch-black fur and eyes that burned like molten gold. Even from this distance the villagers' stories came flooding back. Tales of wolf packs led by creatures that were more than wolves. Beings that could think like humans and command the forest itself. Stories she'd dismissed as superstition and fear. "Timber wolves don't grow that large," she whispered to herself, backing away from the window. The pup whined and scratched at the door with unmistakable urgency. "No," Maya said firmly, her voice sharper with fear than intended. "You can't go out there. It's not safe." Even as she spoke the words, she recognized their absurdity. The pup wasn't in danger from the wolves. He was one of them. She was the one in danger. An oppressive silence had settled over the village. No dogs barked in alarm. No villagers called warnings. It was as if everyone held their breath, waiting. Then came the knock. 3 deliberate strikes against her door, seeming to echo in the silence. Maya froze, her heart hammering against her ribs. Wolves didn't knock. Which meant, "Open the door, human." A deep voice sounded rich with authority and something else, something wild that sent a shiver down her spine. "We know you're in there." The pup barked excitedly, circling Maya's feet. then scratching at the door with renewed vigor. "Shh!" she hissed, though she knew hiding was pointless. Whoever was outside already knew she was here. With trembling fingers, Maya gripped the iron poker beside her fireplace. Not much of a weapon, but all she had. She took a deep breath to steady herself and approached the door. "What do you want?" she called, proud that her voice remained calm despite her fear. "To settle a debt," came the answer, simple and direct. Maya frowned in confusion. She owed no debts in the village. She made sure of that, working overtime when needed to ensure no one could claim she was a burden. "I think you have the wrong place," she said carefully. A soft laugh sounded behind the door, a sound both human and inhuman, mixed with an animal quality that made the hair on Maya's neck stand up. "Open the door, little one," the voice commanded again, quieter now, but no less authoritative. "You will suffer no harm tonight. You have my word." The pup pressed insistently, pushing his nose against her leg as if encouraging her to comply. And something about that touch, the gentle pressure, the implicit trust, gave Maya courage she didn't know she possessed. With a deep breath, she opened the door and pulled it wide. The man, if you could call him that, was nearly a head taller than any villager Maya had ever seen. With broad shoulders and a powerful build, he radiated equal parts strength and authority. His hair was black as midnight, framing sharp features and full lips currently twisted into something that could be either a smile or a threat. But it was his eyes that held her frozen in place. Molten gold, exactly like the eyes of the giant black wolf she'd seen from her window. Exactly like the pup's eyes at her feet. Behind him, the wolves had gathered in a loose semicircle, their breath forming clouds in the cold night air. Their eyes remained fixed on their leader and the human girl before him. "You saved my son," the man said without preamble, his voice carrying the same resonant tone she'd heard through the door. Maya's gaze fell to the pup, who'd slipped past her legs to sit at the stranger's feet, looking up at him with obvious adoration. "Your son," she repeated, the words feeling strange on her tongue. The man's lips curved further upward, revealing teeth that seemed too sharp for a human mouth. "I am Kale, Alpha King of the Northern Territories," he announced, the title rolling off his tongue with practiced ease. "And you, little human, have bound yourself to my pack through blood and bread." Maya gripped the poker tighter. "I don't understand." "Among us," Kale interrupted. "Saving a life means taking responsibility for it. Or sharing one's food when one is hungry, oneself creates a familial bond." His gaze returned to her face, studying her with unsettling intensity. "You did both, without knowing what it would mean." "I just helped an injured animal," Maya protested weakly. "Anyone would have done the same." "No," Kale cut her off, voice sharp. "They would not. Your kind fears mine. They hunt us, trap us." His gaze softened slightly. "Yet you showed compassion where others would have shown cruelty. Such deeds do not go unnoticed among wolves." One of the she-wolves behind him, a sleek creature with silver-gray fur similar to the pup's, stepped forward, her movement fluid and purposeful. Before Maya's astonished eyes, the she-wolf's form began to change. Bones cracked and reformed. Fur vanished until a woman stood where the wolf had been. She was breathtakingly beautiful, with the same silver hair and amber eyes as the pup. "My son," the woman said, her voice musical and strange. "He says you bound his wound and shared your only food with him, though you yourself were starving." Maya felt dizzy. Her world tilted off its axis. Wolf people. Shapeshifters. The creatures of legends and nightmares stood before her door, speaking to her as if their existence were the most natural thing in the world. "Yes," she managed. "He was hurt. I couldn't leave him." The woman, the she-wolf, approached with the same predatory grace in human form that she'd possessed as a wolf. Maya fought the urge to step back, to slam the door and pretend none of this was happening. "I am Lyra, maid of the Alpha King," the woman said, stopping just short of the threshold. And I have come to thank you for saving my child." To Maya's amazement, Lyra bowed her head in a gesture that could only be called a bow. Behind her, the other wolves, some still in animal form, others now standing as striking men and women, mimicked the gesture. "The debt we owe you is sacred," Kyle said, his deep voice echoing in the night air. "And it must be repaid." Before Maya could respond, commotion erupted behind the assembled wolves. In the distance, torches appeared. Villagers, finally noticing the strange gathering at the edge of their settlement. "Wolves!" came a distant call. "To arms! The beasts have come for our children!" Kyle's expression darkened, a growl rising in his chest that sounded utterly inhuman despite his human form. "Your kind judges quickly and understands slowly," he said, Huck turning back to Maya. "But the wheels of fate are already in motion. The debt must be repaid." With a fluid movement that belied his size, Kale stepped over the threshold of Maya's hut, bringing with him the scent of pine and earth and something wilder, something ancient. The pup, his son, jumped excitedly at his feet. "What are you doing?" Maya gasped, backing away from his overwhelming presence. "Claiming what is mine by right," Kale answered simply. "The life debt of a pack member is sacred, little human. You saved my son's life and let him share your table. In return, I offer you protection, provision, and a place among us." Maya's back hit the wall of her cottage. "I don't want to go with you," she protested. Yet even as she spoke, a small part of her wondered if that was entirely true. What did she have here, after all? A life of poverty and loneliness, full of suspicious glances and cold shoulders. Kyle's golden eyes seemed to see through her, recognizing the conflict in her heart. "The choice is no longer so simple," he said, gesturing to the approaching villagers. "Your people have seen you consorting with wolves. They will not judge kindly." As if to confirm his words, the angry shouts grew closer. Maya could now make out fragments, accusations of witchcraft, betrayal, calling down the wolf curse upon the village. "They'll blame me for your presence," she realized aloud. Kale nodded gravely. "Humans fear what they don't understand, and fear makes them dangerous." Maya's thoughts raced. The villagers had never truly accepted her, even before this night. If they believed she had anything to do with wolves coming to their doors, her already precarious situation would become untenable. "If I go with you," she said slowly, weighing each word, "what happens to me?" Something flickered in Kale's golden eyes, perhaps approval or respect for her direct question. "You become part of the pack," he answered simply. "Under my protection, and bound by our laws, you will come to no harm." The pup, the prince, she realized with a jolt, pressed against her leg, looking at her with intelligent amber eyes that seemed to plead for her agreement. "And if I refuse?" Kale's expression remained unmoved. "Then I leave you to your fate with your own kind." He paused, his voice dropping to a lower tone that sent a shiver down her spine. "But be aware, once refused, our debt is considered settled. We will make no further offer." The torches were closer now. Angry voices called Maya's name. Somehow they knew she was involved. Perhaps they'd seen the wolves gather around her hut, or maybe someone had seen her bring the injured pup home. It hardly mattered now. "Decide quickly, little human," Kale urged, extending his hand to her. "Your people approach, and they come with ill intent." Maya looked around her tiny hut, the only home she'd known since her parents died. It wasn't much, but it was hers. Yet what was she really leaving behind? Days of hard labor for meager pay, nights spent alone with only the wind for company, a future that promised nothing but more of the same, until age or illness took her as it had taken her parents. And what waited beyond? A world of wolf people, of beings she'd been taught to fear her entire life, but perhaps also a chance for more than mere survival. The pup whined softly, pressing his nose against her hand. Maya took a deep breath, straightened her shoulders, and reached for Kale's outstretched hand. "I'll go with you," she said, her voice sounding stronger than she felt. A satisfied smile spread across Kale's face, revealing those sharp teeth once more. "A wise choice, little human." His hand closed around hers, warm, calloused, strong. Maya felt a strange current between them, a tingling of something primal and powerful that seemed to connect them in a way she couldn't begin to understand. "My name is Maya," she said suddenly, needing him to acknowledge her as more than just human or little one. Kyle's golden eyes held her gaze for a long moment, and she had the distinct impression that he was memorizing her face, burning every detail into his memory. "Maya," he repeated, and her name rolled off his tongue like something precious. "Welcome to the pack." Outside, the wolves raised their voices in a haunting chorus that echoed through the night and drowned out the approaching villagers' shouts. It was a sound of welcome, of celebration, of new beginnings. And as Kyle led her from the hut she would never see again, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that she'd just changed not only the course of her own life, but something much larger. A delicate balance between two worlds that had been separate for far too long. Behind them, the pup, the young prince, bounded joyfully through the snow, his injury already just a memory, his future secured once more. And ahead of them lay the dark embrace of the forest, and the fate awaiting a human girl who'd dared to show kindness to a wolf. Epilogue. 6 months later. The spring hunt was in full preparation when the attack came. Hunters from the eastern villages, armed with silver weapons and hatred, had set traps in the sacred grove where the pack's most vulnerable members, pregnant females and newborn pups, sought safety during birthing season. Maya didn't hesitate. When young Prince Ren, the silver pup she'd saved, now a 10-year-old boy who could shift at will, ran toward danger to find his mother, Maya followed. She found herself facing a hunter with a silver blade aimed at the cowering pup. "Hey!" Maya shouted, drawing the man's attention. "Leave him alone!" The hunter turned, his momentary surprise giving way to a mocking grin when he saw it was just a girl. "Traitor!" he spat. "Siding with beasts against your own kind." "They're not beasts," Maya replied, raising a fallen crossbow with trembling hands. "And you're trespassing on their land." The man laughed, stepping toward her. "These forests belonged to humans before the wolf curse spread. We're just taking back what's ours." Behind him, Ren growled, fur bristling. "Last warning," Maya said, keeping the weapon steady. "Leave now." The hunter's face darkened. "You first, wolf lover." He lunged, not at Maya, but at Ren, swinging his blade in a deadly arc toward the young prince. Maya fired. The bolt flew true, hitting the hunter's shoulder. Not a killing blow, but enough to bring him to his knees, screaming in pain and shock. "Ren, I go," Maya urged, placing herself between the wounded hunter and the wolf pup. "Find your father." But it was too late. More hunters emerged from the trees, drawn by their comrades' screams. Maya found herself surrounded, the empty crossbow useless in her hands. "Well, well," said the leader, a tall man with a scar bisecting his left cheek. "What do we have here? A human girl protecting a wolf pup." Maya lifted her chin defiantly. "This is their land, protected by ancient treaties. You have no right to be here." The scarred man's eyes narrowed. "Treaties with monsters have no validity, and those who side with monsters," he raised his sword, "share their fate." Maya closed her eyes, expecting the fatal blow. Instead, she heard a sound that froze her blood more than any sword. Ren's pain-filled yelp. She snapped her eyes open to see one of the hunters gripping the struggling wolf pup by the scruff, holding a silver knife to his throat. "No!" Maya screamed. "He's just a child." "It's a monster," the hunter corrected coldly, "and we'll use it to lure the rest of his kind from their den." Desperation clawed at Maya's chest. "Please, take me instead. I'm the traitor, not him. He's innocent." The scarred leader studied her, a cruel smile crossing his face. "Perhaps we'll take both of you. The Alpha would give much for his son, and whatever you are to him." Before Maya could respond, a spine-shaking howl tore through the air, a sound of such pure rage and power that even the hunters froze. Kale burst onto the clearing in wolf form, a massive black beast with eyes like burning gold. Behind him came his warriors, teeth bared, when claws extended. What followed wasn't a battle, but a slaughter. The hunters, despite their silver weapons and hatred, were no match for the full fury of the northern pack led by their Alpha King. Maya threw herself at Ren, shoving aside the hunter holding him. As they fell to the ground, she felt a sharp, burning pain in her side. The silver knife meant for the prince struck her flesh instead. The world narrowed to a single point of agony that spread like liquid fire through her veins. Through dimming eyes, she saw Kale in human form, kneeling beside her, his golden eyes wide with an expression that looked like fear. "Maya," he said, her name a prayer and a plea on his lips. "Hold on, you must hold on." She tried to smile, to tell him she was fine, but her lips wouldn't cooperate. Darkness crept at the edges of her vision. "Ren," she whispered, "is he safe?" "He's safe," Kale assured her, voice rough with emotion. "You saved him again." Maya felt herself being lifted, cradled against Kale's chest as if she weighed nothing. The last thing she saw before losing consciousness was his face above hers, wild and determined, and filled with an emotion she never expected to be directed at her. Not from the Alpha King. Not from anyone. It looked remarkably like love. When Maya finally opened her eyes, she found herself in an unfamiliar room, larger and more magnificent than her own chambers. And there, sitting beside her bed, was Kale, his powerful form somehow diminished by exhaustion. His golden eyes rested on her face with an intensity that took her breath away. "You're awake," he said, every syllable conveying relief. "How long?" Maya tried to sit up, wincing as pain flared in her side. 3 days, Kyle answered, gently pressing her back into the pillows. "The silver nearly killed you. Our healers worked day and night to draw out the poison." Memory returned in fragments. The hunters, Ren in danger, the knife meant for him striking her instead. "Is everyone safe?" "Safe," Kyle assured her. "Thanks to you." A comfortable silence spread between them, filled with unspoken words and new understanding. "This is your room," Maya suddenly realized, looking around the spacious chamber with its carved furniture and royal appointments. Kale nodded. "The healers needed space to work, and He paused, searching for words, an unusual hesitation for the confident Alpha. "I needed you near." The confession hung in the air, it waiting with significance. "Why?" Maya asked, barely more than a whisper. Kyle's golden eyes met hers, all barriers finally falling. "Because I can't lose you," he said simply. "Because in all my years as Alpha, I've never met a soul as brave and beautiful as yours. Because when that silver blade struck you, instead of my son, I realized I'd been denying what my wolf knew from the moment I saw you standing in your doorway, feeding a hungry pup though you were starving yourself." He took her hand, his large hand enclosing her smaller one. "You belong to me, Maya of Blackthorn. My mate. My equal. My heart." Maya stared at him, disbelief warring with a joy so deep it threatened to overwhelm her. "But I'm human," she protested weakly. "Your pack," Kale corrected. "In spirit, you're more wolf than many born with the gift of transformation. You've proven your worth not once but twice, risking your life for my blood." He leaned forward, his face inches from hers. "If you don't feel the same, I'll never speak of this again. You'll always have a place here. You'll always be honored for your courage. But if you can find it in your heart to accept a wolf as your partner—" Maya reached out with her free hand, running her fingers along his sharp jawline. I thought I imagined it, she whispered. The connection between us. I thought a king could never look at a village girl and see something valuable. Cale turned his face into her touch, pressing a kiss to her palm. I saw everything valuable in you from the first moment. I was just afraid to show it. He smiled, wolfish and sharp yet tender. Oh, now I fear nothing, least of all loving you the way you deserve. As his mouth claimed hers in a kiss that sealed both promise and fate, Maya finally understood why she'd felt drawn to save that silver pup on that winter evening. It wasn't chance or coincidence, but destiny, binding together the life of a forgotten human girl and the Alpha King who'd waited his entire life to find the one person brave enough to love both the man and the wolf in him. And in that kiss, Maya found what she'd never dared hope for. Not just survival, but belonging. Not just a place to exist, but a home. Not just acceptance, but love that transcended the boundaries between species and united two worlds that had been separate far too long. By saving a wolf pup, Maya had saved herself, and in the Alpha King's heart, she'd found a love as wild and enduring as the forest itself. If you enjoyed this story, help us with a like or comment. And if you want to hear more stories like this, subscribe to our channel so you don't miss another tale.